Welcome to Everyday Tarot, your daily dive into the divine wisdom of the tarot. I'm your host, Camille A. Saunders, and today I'll be talking about the Hanged Man. Whether you're a seasoned tarot reader or just starting to explore, this podcast offers daily insights, intuitive messages, and practical advice drawn from the cards. Each episode is designed to help you connect with your inner wisdom, find clarity in your decisions, and tap into the energy of the universe. Tune in every day, Monday through Friday, for fresh perspectives and empowering guidance from the tarot as interpreted by me. The best way to support the podcast right now is to listen daily, rate, review, and to follow or subscribe in your chosen podcast app. The next best way is to check out my new Patreon. Supporting me there gives you early access to upcoming podcast episode topics, digital downloads I've created, and monthly tarot hangouts with me and other listeners. The link will be in the show notes to check that out, and you can always go to my website, CamilleASaunders.com/everydaytarot for all the latest information related to the podcast and to find images of the cards that I pull. All right, so welcome to the last episode of Season 2 of the podcast. In the first season, I introduced tarot through talking about oracle versus tarot cards, myths of tarot, how to find a deck, reading for yourself versus others, and much more. In Season 2, I'm going through the first 13 cards of the major arcana, one per episode, and today I'm talking about the final card of this season, the Hanged Man. So, the Hangman. The number associated with this card is 12, and 12s in numerology are all about balance, completeness, divine order, and traits that are associated with the number are expansion, physical strength, knowledge, growth, like in all realms, imagination, tolerance, self-sufficiency, cooperation, and optimism. So thinking about the Hanged Man card, it's commonly seen as a person literally hanging upside down. They're usually suspended in some way. They often have like one foot tied to a tree. Sometimes on the card, it's just really about that like reversed perspective. So often when you pull the card, it almost looks like you need to turn it over, but that's what this card is all about. Usually the person or whatever is depicted looks casual. They don't look freaked out by the fact that they're upside down. And often they kind of look like they're in an upside down yoga tree pose where they have like one foot against the knee and then one fully extended and arms like above them or at rest. So I'm looking at 3 different cards from my decks today, and in the Anima Mundi deck, the Hanged Man card is depicted as a big spider. It kind of looks like an orb weaver spider to me, if you know that one. It has really long legs. And again, because it's a spider, it's sort of suspended by like the tendrils of its web. And this card, there's stars in the background. It's sort of darker at the top of the card and then gets lighter as it goes down. Um, and you can see that there's kind of branches above the spider, like it was up in a tree and then it decided to go down towards the ground. And having a tree in the card is very common as well. So in my Therapist Who Tarot deck, this humanoid figure in this card, and it is a person upside down. There's no tree present in this one, and you actually can't even see the legs like on the person. You can actually see like their ribs. It's like looks like a full rib cage that's present. You can see like their face, but you don't really see like a whole lot else. And you could count each individual rib across the person. So like in other cards that this deck depicts, like the humanoid figures, they almost look like they're wearing like a cape or a cloak of some sort. It looks like there's like a neutral expression on the person's face, and then there's sort of these like horizontal stripes that go across the whole card. They don't like go across the person, but they sort of go across the card itself, almost like it's behind them. And they're different colors. Some are yellow, some are bluish, and some are purple. And the medium for this art on these cards is watercolor, so it's always a bit like abstract and sort of like blurred looking, the way that watercolor is, where the like color seeps in different ways. But again, the person, they don't look really freaked out or anything. They look like, yeah, like it's fine. I meant to be here. And this deck has a word below each of the card names. So the word for this one says wisdom. All right, and then for the last card that we're going to be talking about today, related to one of the decks I have, is in the Goddess of Love Tarot deck by Gabriella Herstick. So in this one, there's kind of a lot going on in the card. So it sort of has the traditional, like image of like a person suspended from a tree. So there's like tree branches at the top of the card. There's like their legs are both like fully extended and their arms are both up, sort of like at a right angle. And then there's actually like dolphins or like porpoises, two of them, but they look sort of different colored on either side of the person, like they're jumping out of the water. And then there's like water below the person's head. So almost like as if there was like a tree reached out over the ocean and a person was like hanging from it. And then you have like dolphins flying in the background, jumping out of the water. And like I said, the water below the person, it sort of looks like the ocean. You see like white caps, crashing water, so it looks kind of like tumultuous. And then the person has two things in their hands. So in their left hand, they are holding a heart. Um, and then in their right hand, they're holding like a red rose, a stemmed rose. And then the other thing on the card is they're sort of like, they look like they're wearing like a crown and like a sash, sort of, and they're made out of yellow flowers that to me sort of look like calendula flowers. If you know those, often they're orange or something like that. They're in the marigold family. They have very like delicate, like, frilly petals. And they're very brightly colored. So that's kind of like the image that I get. And I look at this one. So let's get into the meanings of the cards. So in the Anima Mundi deck, I looked it up and it says like what type of creature or plant or tree or mountain that's depicted. So apparently in this one, it's actually a male black widow spider. And it talks about that, and I guess I've never really seen a male black widow spider depicted. I think like we often see the female black widow spider that looks black with like the red hourglass on their stomach, I think. So yeah, I didn't know this one right off the bat, but it says that the male black widow spider will sacrifice himself to the female during mating, allowing her to cannibalize him in order to assure successful copulation. Sometimes surrender is the best option. Perhaps you're currently stuck and can't make a decision. In this case, postponing said decision and taking the time to reflect may be best for you. Try looking at things in a different perspective. And it talks about the themes associated with this card are self-sacrifice, new perspectives, suspension, feeling stuck, and letting go. So there is that sort of, right, if you were tied up in a tree by your leg, like there's not a lot you can do. Right, maybe you could like totally swing up and try to untie it or something, but this card is often really about like that neutral expression on the person's face. Like, okay, well, this is where I'm at. I'm upside down. And like, let's take a look around and see what's actually going on from this perspective. So very interesting with this card. And just sort of like Black Widow female spiders, right? We like call serial killers that are women that kill men black widows. I think of like the Black Widow, like Marvel character too, where there's like the sinisterness to a woman or like a female character that chooses to kill men or males. And this is interesting because, right, it's sort of talking about that, like, in this like type of spider, like it's part of the process. It's like part of how they have babies is that like this happens. And so it's almost like this, okay, it's not like she's choosing to kill him because she's really mad and doesn't like him and like it's not like there's no purpose to it. It's like there's definitely a purpose to it. And they even talk about the sort of, right, there's this like willingness, sort of, or just the like, okay, well, I guess this is happening, so here we go. The like surrender of it all, which is sort of Interesting. All right, so let's take a look at the Therapist Who Tarot card. And again, this deck, it doesn't have any like deck book descriptions with it. So it has a word on the bottom that says wisdom. And then if we flip it over, there are questions on the back. So the questions with this card are, what are you accepting to balance? What are you attempting to balance in your life? What is your relationship with play? And what do you need to adapt to? So again, it's really about, right, like, okay, like flexibility, like maybe there's this playfulness or like neutrality, or like, again, like sort of the willingness of like being wrapped up or tied like to a tree, this like aspect of almost that there's like consent along with it. And like a playfulness. And then what are you attempting to balance in your life? Right? Again, like it might not feel like balance when, right, things feel topsy turvy. But, right, when you think of these people and these cards, like they are balanced in a tree. Now, usually there's like a rope depicted, or sometimes there's like a snake wrapped around the person, which is sort of like showing this like constriction, or that they're tied up in some way, or that there's like some level of like they don't totally have control over the situation. Um, but there's also, right, like there are aspects of our lives that we do have control over. And maybe that, right, sometimes letting go of that control is important, and letting like things play out. So I really think of that with these questions too. Like, what do you need to adapt to, right? Maybe it feels like, again, your life is turned upside down. Okay, well, instead of trying to just go back to how it was, right, what do you see now from this perspective that maybe feels more clear, or you get some clarity around that type of thing. All right. And then in the Goddess of Love tarot deck, the card depicted here, this deck almost always has goddesses depicted, so I'm going to look at the book to see what particular goddess is here, but it's got a lot of like water vibes, and also sort of the love part of it with the heart and the rose. So I'm looking through my book here. Okay. And in this one, the cards actually changed to the Hanged One, which is actually how it is in the Therapist Who Tarot deck too. So making sort of the person gender neutral instead of just saying it's a man. So it says that, okay, so the goddess depicted is ocean, and the elemental correspondence is water. So yeah, that makes sense as to why there's dolphins and sort of all this water depicted. I'm going to read a little bit from this guidebook. It's sort of long, so I'm probably not going to talk about everything, but it talks about the being in service to and through the heart is a constant reawakening to beauty and truth. But to get to this clarity is dizzying, and sometimes comes with an unexpected vantage point. The Hanged One is a card of intensity, often represented as a figure hanging from their ankles, but surrounded by a halo of golden light. So like in this one, it has kind of the flowers all around its head, or like a flower, like a crown. And it talks about that this is the awakening that comes with surrender. The Hanged Man has the elemental correspondence of water and is thus tied to ocean. The Yoruban spirit, or Orisha of the sweet water, whose love helped bring the universe into creation. So water baptizes, washes away, and generates anew. Ocean is a spirit of compassion and vibrance, the shining diamond after it has been polished. As a river goddess associated with fertility and purification, ocean embodies the vision of clarity of the mind through release, and how this can lead to rebirth, blessings, and new beginnings. The Hanged One, this is a card of baptism of rebirth, love, and wisdom. The goddess is gently nudging you to see things from a different perspective, perhaps from the heart or the body instead of the mind. It illuminates the power of love to wash away all wounds and to shape your evolution, not by rejecting feelings or pain, right? Because again, being tied to a tree, suspended by the ankle, doesn't sound super fun. It sounds kind of painful. You don't know how long you're going to be there, but by seeing them as a gift to an understanding of your devotion and your heart, right? Again, hopefully there's a reason why you're up in that tree. And again, often it looks like the person is maybe not there willingly, but maybe they said it was okay at the time. And this deck often comes with affirmations and journal questions associated with the card. So I like the journal question associated with this card this time, where it says, "What can I view with fresh eyes, and how can I surrender and find goddess wisdom through it?" So again, the Hanged One is often about that literal, like topsy-turvy, the perspective of being upside down, and sort of what things look different from there, what clarity can you find, and sort of like what can you see from there, right? I often like will turn the card over to look at sort of like what it would look like straight on, just because for our brains it's kind of hard to like look at an upside down figure. Um, and yeah, it's just always very interesting in that way. In the Fearless Tarot book, How to Give a Positive Reading in Any Situation by Elliot Adam, they talk about that the Hanged Man is really about sacrificing for the greater good, which again, if we think of sort of like the Black Widow male spider, um, again, they're sort of like allowing this to happen, or they're being cannibalized by the female Black Widow spider in order to like have the successful babies in the end. That there's a reason why it's happening, right? It's not just that everything is going terribly or that kind of thing, and that it's just supposed to be this way and just deal with it. It's sort of about like, okay, usually like there's a reason why, there's a reason, there's something to be gained from that sort of upside down perspective. Talks about it being a temporary sacrifice to achieve a greater goal. Could be sacrificing time, energy, comfort, resources, old habits, or an outdated attitude. For success to be achieved, a sacrifice is often required. By pooling your best energies and resources into your goal, you will ensure that it manifests. And I feel like this card is often about like things that feel like they're taking a long time. What's coming up for me right now are like two different things. We've been looking at, my boyfriend and I have been looking at places we might want to move on to bigger property, to maybe have more of like a farm. Right now we live in town on just shy of a quarter acre, which I love, but I also would love a little more space to play with. Um, and so we've been exploring our state and looking at other places where we might want to live and sort of going there and staycationing there or like looking at what it might actually be like to live there. And so we did that over this weekend. And I know for me, like in some ways, right, I just wanted to be over. I just want to like be in the house, be in the property, like be excited to move to the next step. But there's also like fun things that happen of just like being in this, I guess, like sort of limbo space. It doesn't always feel good, but like we had fun adventures this weekend. We kind of get to figure out like, okay, what is important to us. Sometimes it makes things a lot clearer about like, oh, okay, I thought I wanted this thing, right? I thought I maybe wanted to have the most acreage possible that I could get, but maybe that's like actually not when I go see those properties, or when I think about maybe the sacrifices that would be required to get the amount of land that I might have dreamed of. Like maybe it doesn't always seem worth it, or maybe it just makes my priorities a little bit clearer of like, okay, well, actually, I'd rather it feel more private than just to have like the most land possible, for example. So this is something in my own life. The other thing I thought of is that like a lot of these cards look like, again, there's sort of this like constriction or like suspension. It really makes me think of like shibari or like self-tying practice. I think sometimes like literally because it looks like people are like tied up with rope. But also if we think about sort of like what that is like often like a meditative process, or something that right from the outside might look like, why are you constricting your body in that way? That seems painful, like this or that, like rope tying in general. Um, but there's also this aspect of like again, maybe meditative process of it, or this like, I guess shibari is self-tying, so you don't necessarily have that, but sometimes like being suspended by ropes or things in like BDSM situations is often about, again, sort of like giving over that control to someone else, and that there's like a consensual process by which you do it, and also like that still doesn't necessarily mean you're going to know exactly what it's like when it's happening. And of course, there's lots of safe ways to do this, and having safe words, and making sure that you know how to do this properly if you're doing it with someone else. That you have training, so you're not cutting off circulation in bad ways that are irreversible. But again, it's sort of this like consensual constriction, or like this process of surrender, which I think really goes along with this card here. All right, so let's dive in and see what the cards have to say today. And I'm going to really be thinking about that aspect of surrender. Like, what do we need to surrender to right now? Where are we feeling stuck? And where can we maybe look at, okay, like what are the benefits of embracing the limbo period, or postponing maybe a decision or something like that, taking time to reflect when maybe your first instinct is just to go as fast as possible, or right to get to the end goal, at again as fast as possible, or with whatever means necessary. What can we learn from sort of being in the limbo process? Interesting. Okay, so I pulled a card from the Sassaribito Tarot deck by Stasia Burrington, and I pulled the Chariot, which is another card that we talked about this season. Usually it's the number 7 card in the Major Arcana. So sort of interesting in thinking about this idea of surrender, 'cause it's not necessarily the first card that would come to mind for me. But again, as a reminder, the Chariot is like a warrior. The Chariot signifies victory over your opposition through strength of will, determination, self-confidence, and control. You will succeed in your campaign. The card represents a battle that can be won. Sometimes the battle has to have strategic tactics, and you might need bravery, conviction, and discipline to lead to an eventual success and recognition. And if you have a current obstacle, the card can be a suggestion to brace yourself, hold steady, and power your way through the conflict. So yeah, I guess after reading it, I'm like, okay, I guess I see where where we're going with this. So again, I'm sort of thinking of this like house buying process in my own life of like, okay, so right, like I can stick with my tactics. I can be strategic about, right, places we go, right? I'm not going literally all over the state, but I'm going to areas where I've looked at, where when I look at properties, I'm sort of intrigued, or I find like a bunch of properties in one area, and I'm like, okay, I seem to really like either the style of house or like the sort of neighborhood or environment here. Like, okay, let me go to those places, which would be the strategic aspect. And then it sounds like also there's this aspect of like it might feel like it's taking a long time, or that there's like all these things in the way. Maybe like people aren't getting back to you, or like you thought it would go faster, or like it feels like a deadline is approaching. But I feel like this card's telling us like it's gonna happen. Like, don't worry. Like, you're doing what you can, right? Just like keep doing the things that you know make strategic sense. Like keep, right, like looking forward, like planning, having the discipline and conviction, and that it will lead to eventual success. Even if right now maybe you don't see like where that's going to be, right? Maybe you have the dream or the vision or the goal of what you really want. But again, like in thinking about my own example of property, like I sort of have some things in mind of what I think I want. Um, and then, but I don't really know what it's going to look like in the end. I have like visions, I have goals, I have dreams about what it could be, but I don't really know like what is actually going to be the one that's going to feel like this is the right move. This is what fits me and my personality and my lifestyle and the location and the property that's going to be the best sun for gardening, but also have pasture for the livestock, and also have woods for privacy, or just like the mix of things, right? Like, and that's part of the fun of looking sometimes, but also, right, it can feel very frustrating when it feels like you look and look and look, and then maybe you don't find what you want, or maybe it seems like too much money, or maybe it just seems like unrealistic, or it's not in the places where you would like, where I feel like this card's telling us, like, don't worry, it's coming. Whatever you want is coming to you. So just keep doing like the day to day of what you need to do, and it will come to fruition. All right, and links for the tarot decks that I've talked about today will always be in the show notes and on my website if you'd like to look at them or purchase them. And thanks for joining me today on Everyday Tarot. Just as a reminder, the podcast will come out daily, Monday through Friday for all of 2025. All right, see you soon. Bye-bye.